The body, as complicated as it is, with all the different systems, I mean, think about all the systems that have to be coordinated by the autonomic system. It's like
Yeah, you can't even
structures and muscles and organs and glands and biochemistry and chakras and meridians and however, as complicated as that is, it's all run from very simple computer programs in the brain. As a matter of fact, what runs it is two basic rules that govern everything. Rule number one, survive at all costs. Rule number one. And because if you don't do that, what's the point of the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
You die like an idiot. So rule number one, survive at all costs. If you feel threatened, you pull out all the stops and you gather energy from everywhere, and everything goes suspended, and you take that energy and put it in your muscle to fight for your life. Number two, be ecological. Get the most work with the least amount of energy expended. Don't waste life energy. Do no self-harm, because self-harm would be happening if I'm not 100% efficient, because every ounce of life energy that I waste is essentially suiciding out. It's right. It's breaking rule number one. It's like I'm not surviving at all costs. I'm wasting my life energy, which is breaking that rule. So actually rule number two is do no self-harm is really, unless it breaks rule number one. So I have permission to sort of gnaw my foot off if it's cut in a trap to save the rest of my life.
Correct.
In larger. So,
yes.
But this concept of
gnawing my foot up. It's like a really.
I know. Sorry for that image.
Okay.
Sorry, I put that image in your brain.
I cannot unsee that. Let's keep going.
But the implications that start to spin from all this gives a lot of insight into how people live their lives and how they order their lives. So, for instance, one of the ways that the body obeys rule number two is to get double and triple duty out of every body structure. So take the bones, for instance. A long bone in your leg has trabecula. It's got these like sponge-like openings inside, right? It makes the bone lighter. Otherwise, you'd weigh 360 pounds just from your skeletal system. Right. So it's hollow. And inside those, and it makes it lighter and it makes it more flexible, which is actually stronger. So you're getting three things there. The fourth thing is that's where your bone marrow is. That's where the manufacturing plant for red and white blood cells is. In all of your bones, that's where it's manufactured. So it's quadruple duty.
You're right. Those are light factories.
It's like, and everything is that way.
It's amazing.
Everything's getting double, triple duty. My body clocks, right? So inside the center of your brain is this little zone, little triangular zone, like the pyramids of Cheops. It's called the hypothalamus. Inside the hypothalamus are these micro-miniaturized little organelles. They've all got cool, fancy schmancy names. I spent a lot of money learning these names, so I'm going to say those names.
Say it, please. We're here for it.
So one of them is called the anterior hypothalamic nuclei. That is the center of the parasympathetic nervous system. That's where it starts. And then the posterior hypothalamic nuclei is the center and beginning of the sympathetic nervous system. That's where they reside. The parasympathetic has a branch that comes down, goes into the brainstem, exits out the brainstem, and becomes the vagus nerve. It's the vagus nerve.
I never knew that.
The vagus nerve governs parasympathetic response.
Yep.
The parasympathetic nervous system controls the system, because the vagus nerve comes out, goes straight to all your organs, and the sympathetic system goes down your spinal cord and comes out through the nerve roots at spinal levels into something called the sympathetic chain. Then it goes out the other side of the sympathetic chain into something called postganglionic neurobundles.
Say that 10 times fast.
I earned all these. And then only then does it come out of that into the organs, the same organs that the parasympathetic is innervating. So you can see that there's stages of lag in the sympathetic system.
Yeah.
When I have to respond like instantaneously to a threat, which means that what's happening is when I respond to a threat instantaneously, the parasympathetic is controlling it by turning itself off, which makes the sympathetic turn on by default up here, without all this rigmarole down here. Down here is the slow adaptive process over time to stresses in your life that medicine calls allostatic load. Allostatic load is the medical terminology for stress is the ultimate cause of disease. It's my inability to adapt to the increasing levels of stress coming at me from the outside world and the inside world, that I slowly adapt to those and I build myself up to handle it, and I'm still okay. But as it goes on, or maybe have a big trauma or two, pretty soon the stresses are bigger than I am. And that's when the sympathetic locks in to this zone. What I'm saying is under the hood, the 21st century is working away at you all the time. It's like, and one of the ways it does that is because one of the ways the body does to save energy is it has bioclocks. Back inside the hypothalamus, there's another little teeny tiny one, little organelle called, this is $1 million word, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is the core and center of your body clocks. And it's hardwired right into the pineal gland, straight back and up. The pineal gland is sensitive to light-dark cycles, right? Because it's derived from the same embryonic tissue as your eyeball. And you're setting some of your body clocks to the length of the day. Seasonal affective disorder comes from a screwing up of that. You're setting your body thermostat for the correct season. The other is for women who have a menstrual cycle. You have an ovulation cycle every 28 and a half days, timed to a new moon, full moon cycle of 28 and a half days, and you're locked into one phase of that cycle forever. And where that begins is at the moment you're conceived.
Wow.
What phase of the moon was in at the moment you were conceived stamps you on the forehead with a time clock.
So wild.
And if you get out of sync with your timing mechanism to the moon phase, you have irregular menstrual cycles. This was my specialty for 40 years, so please forgive me if I'm talking. But women's problems and menstrual problems and irregular menstrual problems and problems with pregnancy. And over here, children with neurological developmental disorders, ADD and ADHD and dyslexia and autism. And I was a specialist in all of that. But in order to do that, these aspects now become important because they're underlying conditions of a lot of these different things that are going on. Anyway, the same body clock mechanism is how I save energy. My body is unconsciously constantly has feelers out into the environment. It has electromagnetic field feelers, it's got vibration feelers, sound feelers, light pulse feelers. It's looking for rhythms in the universe to time my own body clocks to, so that I don't have to invent a new drum beat every second, which takes more energy. If I can tie myself to a drum beat that's already beating, then I save energy. So I'm doing that all the time, looking all the time. And that was fine when you wake up in the morning with the sun and grab your spear. But it's not fine when you wake up with an alarm clock every day and get in a traffic jam to a stupid job in a cubicle working for a boss with a development of a 3-year-old, right?
Blue light
so,
screens, yeah.
And you come back to the 6 o'clock news. Doesn't work anymore. And now that means that when we're sitting in a place that's got a wall within 6 feet of us, the wiring in that wall has 60 hertz alternating electromagnetic current.
Oy.
It's man-made, 60 hertz hum. It's electromagnetic hum. And it extends 6 feet out. So if you're within 6 feet, your body clocks are trying to time themselves to this pulse that is constantly looking for the most dominant pulse in an environment to switch allegiance to.
Wow.
This one tends to be the loudest, in my environment electromagnetically, so I try to time to that. When I usually time myself to nature, I'm dancing with a partner that dance back, because nothing is precise in nature. The rhythms of nature are always a little drifty. They're always drifting a little bit, and I'm drifting with it, right? And that's the dance. The dance between me and nature is constantly dancing to this drum beat. Everybody's dancing to the same drum beat, but nobody's beating the drum except everybody by consensus vote in a collective unconscious metaverse, right? We're all connected.
Thank you for listening to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. And make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. Oh, and if you found this episode inspiring, please rate, review, and share Heal with Kelly so that we can grow our audience and reach more people. We truly appreciate it. Lots of love.